Welcome to the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Counsel with hosts Grace Evans and Moses Brattrud. Stay informed on the top stories on life, family, and religious freedom. Get the facts, stand for truth.
Hello and welcome back to the Family Beacon podcast. I'm your host, Moses Brattrud. This is a very special episode this week. Grace, unfortunately, is not able to join us today, but who is able to join us today is Renee Carlson, and Renee is the General Counsel for True North Legal, which is a legal initiative of Minnesota Family Institute, and it is, I think I can say without fear of contradiction, one of the absolute most important things that we are doing right now. As you know, we're involved in all sorts of different initiatives to help advance life, family, and religious freedom in Minnesota. This is one of those initiatives. It's something that we've just spun up in the last few years, and it is. I'm so excited for Renee to tell you more about it today. So that makes this a really special episode, and I think you're going to enjoy it. I want to say before we get started, remember, if you're on Apple Podcasts, if you love this podcast, the best thing you could do for us would be to leave us a 5-star review. Tell us how much you enjoyed this episode, and tell us what you like, and give us an opportunity to do better. And that helps us get seen by more people. Same thing if you're on YouTube. Click that like button, click that subscribe button, and click that bell icon so that you get a notification whenever we post a new episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Renee, I'm so glad that you could join us in the studio this morning. I guess my first question is, what is True North Legal and what does it do?
Right. Well, so glad to be here. Thanks, Moses, for having me. As you stated, True North Legal is Minnesota Family Council's newest initiative. We're actually part of Minnesota Family Institute, and we will handle litigation, policy matters, and education. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty broad. Mm-hmm. We intentionally designed this entity to kind of hit each of those points, kind of like a three-legged stool. We feel like there's a completeness and a wholeness by being able to educate the public, mm-hmm. being able to engage in policy matters, and then having the teeth of litigation if we need to go to court.
Right.
So specifically in education, we will be available for presentations, for distribution of materials and resources that are helpful. Mm-hmm. We've done some webinars here. I know you and I worked on some things with CAN last year in COVID.
Right.
But we just want to help our local Minnesotans understand what's going on. And I'm very passionate about helping people take these legal concepts and then distill them into simple concepts.
Right.
We really want to be able to create the narrative and speak into our cultural issues and have the confidence to do it. And I feel like people often hold back because they don't feel like they have the confidence or they don't have
right.
time to keep up.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to really give people an opportunity to do that through our educational efforts.
I just think that's so important because, you know, sometimes it sort of seems like lawyers run the world.
Oh, well, this is great.
Yeah, and you're one of them. No, and sometimes those lawyers running the world are hostile to life, family, and religious freedom, unfortunately.
Right.
And so, and people do. I think you said they feel intimidated. I think that's totally right. They feel that they just don't have the information they need to challenge something that they know is wrong.
Right.
But they don't have the standpoint to challenge it. And so you providing that, I think, is just so crucial. And we've already seen that bear fruit.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, and I think too, just the compliment is, here at Minnesota Family Council, we are a faith-based organization, and a lot of our constituents have values that, we all embrace, specifically biblical values. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to put those two together to say that, yes, we know truth, but there's also scientific or legal substance to that just makes
right.
it all the more powerful.
Absolutely.
And it just, makes us relatable to the world. It helps mm-hmm. us. We need to be able to communicate in Caesar's world. That's where we live. So we're hoping to do that. With respect to policy, we have engaged much both on the front lines testifying and also behind the scenes, whether it's helping legislators and other municipalities, other government officials. Mm-hmm. We engage in some drafting of legislation, and I also advise our policy director and others internally who engage on the front lines of policy here at the Capitol in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And then with respect to litigation, we have had some matters that we've engaged in collaboratively with other groups We're helped defend churches. We're also engaged in some of the COVID issues right now, advising lots of employees and helping school parents understand their rights, students understand their rights. We're engaging in pro-life. There's definitely a lot going on. And, when cases come that need to be handled, we'll go forward with them. And we are creating a team to be able to have the resources to do that.
That's so exciting. I mean, it's heartening just for me as a citizen. And I think that's wonderful. Speaking of not quite litigation, because thankfully it didn't get this far, but can you tell us a little bit about how we helped, how you helped Pastor Mike last year during COVID?
Yeah, that was really a humbling project to be a part of, and it definitely had a wonderful outcome. So we have a pastor here in Chaska who was facing some discrimination. Their church was told during COVID that they could not host worship outside in their parking lot. One of the only churches I've heard that actually faced that.
Right.
They had a ministry event that was going to be held outside that they've done annually, I think for 12 to 15 years, and it's actually a motorcycle ride where groups of people come to...
Sounds pretty COVID safe, I have to say.
It's all outdoors. People were spaced out, and so what happens is people join the parking lot. They join 6 to 10 feet apart in a parking lot stall, and then they all ride together, and then they come back, and then they have fellowship. But in this case, they were going to have, fellowship is going to look different. It's going to be spaced out, and all the precautions. The church was very diligent about making safe precautions for themselves and for the community and for the liability of the church. And when they asked for permission, they were told that, well, initially they wanted to go to a park, which they were rejected. And then they wanted to do it in their own parking lot, they were going to host a worship service prior, and they were told that they couldn't. So we stepped in and helped the church understand what their rights are. But I didn't realize at the time that we were helping that the implications would be tenfold, because this ministry is actually a partnership with another ministry called John Just Ride. And John is a gentleman who died in a motorcycle accident, I believe about 15 years ago. And his parents started a ministry in his honor because he just loved the Lord. And so together this church and John Just Ride hosts this event every year, and they raise money donating to pastors in Africa so that pastors can cover more ground to share the gospel.
Wow.
So, not being able to have this event was detrimental to the community here in Minnesota, and also to those pastors in Africa who depend on these motorcycles, and also to Cindy and John Just, who do this again, in remembrance and honor of their son.
That's wonderful.
So thankfully, we were able to help out, and there wasn't any sort of legal challenge. And that's why, sometimes you just need a lawyer to get in there and tell people what their rights are.
Right.
So sometimes it's just not that hard. And, not everybody has malicious intent or ill motives. We don't know the motives, but we know that what they were telling this church was wrong. And so we were there to step in and say, hey, these people have rights and they're allowed to have a worship service.
Right.
So I'm happy to report that the church was able to host. And as a result, the ministry actually raised the most money they ever had in a COVID year. And were able to buy, I think it was 48 or 49 motorcycles and give them to pastors who are covering ground. So yeah, I encourage anybody listening, check out John Just Ride. It's an amazing ministry. And see what you think. And again, very humbled to be a part of something like that.
That's so great. I think, it would be easy to think, going into this project that you would be doing work that was a couple steps removed from spreading the gospel, let's say.
Yeah.
And yet what you were able to do led directly to the success of a ministry event, which led directly to these pastors in Africa being equipped to share the gospel. I mean, that's awesome. I love that.
Well, it was all God.
Lawyers can do the Lord's work.
Yes, that is
That's wonderful. So Renee, True North Legal has been a thing for a couple years now. What is your background, and how did you get involved with Minnesota Family Counsel?
Yes. Well, I had funny story, but I started actually. I'm not from Minnesota, So, but my first job was working at Minnesota Family Council. I came here and I always, I said, before I even realized what this meant for my life, I vocalized this interest in public policy and law specific to issues relating to family, marriage, and life.
And you wanted to do it in the best state in the union.
Absolutely. I wanted to do it where it gets a little too chilly for me. I know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that you share with native Minnesotans. It gets too chilly I'm from Wisconsin, but it gets too chilly for us too.
Right. So being
and
from
then
the
we complain about it for 6 months.
Exactly. And then you become a very hardy person and very thankful. It does
Right.
create a different kind of person.
I do think so.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful to have the opportunity to be here with MFC and to be essentially back where I started. So I started here as an intern, and then I worked for the Minnesota State Senate. And at that point, the Lord had just showed me that law school was the path. And I felt a strong sense of, justice and advocacy. And I know that kind of sounds cliche, but being in the policy world, I felt like the law would help equip me even more for the things that I felt called to, especially in this arena and the deep nuances of constitutional law. So ended up going to law school.
I don't think I've ever asked where you went to law school.
I went to the University of St. Thomas.
St. Thomas? Okay,
Yes.
so locally. Great.
Yes, and that was a fantastic experience. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yes, so I felt like it was a personal experience, and I think that that's something that they do well there. So
That's great. So you worked in Minnesota Family Council many years ago, and then you were able to go to law school, and now you're back and doing this amazing work. And you spoke about having a calling to be a lawyer. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I actually ask myself, sounds silly, to articulate that in my own mind, probably weekly and monthly, because as you know, the stuff that we deal with can be really intense.
Yeah.
It's not typical results, and we're dealing with real people's lives. So in law school, I was able to do the Blackstone Legal Fellowship with Alliance Defending Freedom. And that
cool.
also, I was very, very blessed to be able to do that and honored to be a part of that program. And that just solidified kind of this calling and the direction that I wanted to go. And I worked for Professor Teresa Collette, who is the director of the University of St. Thomas Pro-Life Center, and who I also co-counseled with on our amicus brief and DoBBs. So kind of came full circle with that.
That's wonderful.
But yes, just had these experiences that continued to show me this was the path. I did say that I would never do criminal law, and it ends up that my first position was an assistant county attorney.
Oh, man.
So, but it was definitely an experience that I appreciate. I worked both in the civil and criminal division in 2 counties in Minnesota, and both of those things had very transferable skills and helped me in what I'm doing now. So, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to even understand what it's like to be in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have been as sympathetic to things that I am now because of my exposure. It just helped me to understand, people's place in life, and that, everybody has different circumstances.
Right.
And so I think that there isn't always one side to every story, but we need to consider all of the facts.
Right. That's interesting. I think I've seen your prosecutorial background come through in a way that's helpful, and helpful to the work that you're doing now, which constitutional law, religious freedom advocacy. It seems like it's so distant, but you're saying not necessarily.
Yeah, I think there's with all of the law, there's a correlation. And I try to tell people this, especially when I do presentations, is that one case isn't necessarily an outlier, especially when you're in, if it's in your jurisdiction or if it's in a certain area of law, but it's not, one thing is usually not isolated. It will most likely impact all other areas.
Sure.
Just as like a caveat, I explained that the, Roe v. Wade started with cases well before that. I believe one of the foundational cases was even about child labor laws. Really? Much early on. But if you follow the trajectory, so, you might have a case and you have no idea what's going to come out of it. So, again, it's good for people to pay attention to what's going on. A lot of people think that they can, cabin an issue and say, well, if I don't engage, that's okay because it's not going to have an impact. When, in fact, there's consequences down the road, and that's why we care about.
Yeah, that's so
engaging.
important. Yeah, some people might think that if something is a really important issue, legal issue, that it'll just eventually work its way up to the Supreme Court and be decided there. And that is how our court system, it works with the most tricky issues. But at the same time, the issues that you're able to solve here at the local level in municipal courts and in state courts, and even before things come to court. I mean, coming to court is the last resort in many cases. So that's so like dealing with those problems. Those are the problems you don't necessarily hear about in the news, but it is just as important, if not more so, that those do get dealt with.
Absolutely. I think sometimes, the best work that we can do is to not have to go to court, is to shut things down right away, whether it's sending a letter and, again, telling, whether it's a corporation or a school or a government entity, another government entity, politely reminding them, hey, these are rights that you're infringing on. You're in violation. And, and a lot of times it just takes that. And again, I don't think that it's always ill motives, but some people just simply don't even know, or they don't even realize. So we're here to make sure that our local laws are followed and that we advance things when we need to. And again, that's something I very much appreciate about True North Legal, and again, our three-legged stool approach. We are local boots on the ground. I guess I have been here long enough to say I'm a Minnesotan. And so, we understand some of the local nuances, particularly in schools. We might know our judges, and so we've kind of got a leg up when it comes to the local issues, and I'm excited about the growth of True North Legal being a local legal entity.
That's so cool, and I know that many other people are excited about it. The response that we've seen is just amazing. People are so grateful that we're doing this work.
Great.
So we've talked about how the success that you had last year with Pastor Mike and the Evangelical Free Church in Chaska.
Right.
What are some other of True North Legal's significant accomplishments since you came on board?
Right. Well, most of the time that I've been on board has actually been through COVID.
Sure.
I came on about 6 weeks prior to everything COVID. We've had some we've assisted other churches. Nothing rose to the occasion of the Chaska issue, but just helping them to navigate, how to consistently have worship, how to be able to continue to engage, and that they don't have to shut their churches down, making sure they follow proper protocol so that they stay above reproach and can continue to hold worship services. That's been really satisfying, and
I'm sure that's been helpful because you are, in addition to being a lawyer, you are also a pastor's wife.
Yes, I am, and so I do think that helps bring a unique perspective. I understand the context of ministry in a way that many others probably don't.
Right.
Ministries are not businesses. They run differently. People don't check their faith at the door. It's not a 9 to 5 thing. It's a consistency. Yeah. And so there's a lot of that plays into just the internal operations of a church and what's important, and even how to make decisions, and to understand that each church is unique. And so just like each believer is unique. So again, going back to COVID, I've seemed to have been caught in the middle of that. Yeah. I'd say in the last couple of months, we've been helping a lot of employees who are faced with discrimination at work, who are having to, file religious exemptions, and we've been walking people through those, giving consultations about that. And we've had a lot of success. It's really been exciting to see a lot of these exemptions being granted. I think what's been heartbreaking is to have phone calls from fathers and from single mothers saying, "Help me, please! If I don't get this exemption, I'm going to lose my job."
Oh my goodness!
So there's a lot of that out there, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and it's been really humbling to be able to walk alongside people, and then satisfying to have them call or to have them email and say, "I'm so thankful that True North Legal was here to help walk me through this, to help me understand my rights, to help me understand Title VII." I mean, now that just rolls off everyone's tongue. I think half the country is an expert on Title VII now. Right.
People are of necessity becoming more familiar with these obscure legal doctrines. Right. I do want to say something to our viewers about Minnesota Family Council's position, because I've had some messages saying that we should just follow public health guidance and we should advocate for vaccines. And we are not anti-vaccination at Minnesota Family Council. We have no positions on whether you should or should not get vaccinated. You should get vaccinated if you think it's the right decision for you. But what we do oppose is people, employers and governments coercing people against their sincerely held conscience-based beliefs to get a vaccination that they disapprove of and that has various moral questions, and that maybe even they're worried about the safety of it. And for those reasons, we just simply believe they should not be forced to do that. Am I articulating that well? I mean,
right.
you're the one who knows this. You know our stance much better than I do, even though I'm the communications director, because you're on the ground helping people.
Right. Well, freedom of conscience is something that we should all be concerned about. So True North Legal recently engaged in an amicus brief project for the United States Supreme Court.
Which is so cool.
Yes, we were very excited about this. We really wanted to engage in DoBBs, and we were able to do that with the help of Professor Teresa Collette. Her and I co-counseled on this brief and are very proud of our work product. Not only because it is something that we believe the justices should take a look at and gives them important information about abortion, but it's also a tool that legislators can use, and anybody that wants to read the brief can use if they want to be more informed about abortion and the destruction that it's caused for society and for women and for young women. We're very excited that we partnered also. One of our clients is Advancing American Freedom, which is Mike Pence's new nonprofit. So his first sort of legal project was our brief, and we're very thankful and very proud to partner with them, as well as 5 other family policy organizations that joined our brief as well.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's wonderful not only that we're able to partner with organizations like ours in other states, but also with a former vice president. I mean, that is cool.
Very, very good accomplishment for True North Legal.
So that brief, that amicus brief, is for the Dobbs v. Jackson case.
Correct.
And the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments on December 1st for that case. And you will be in Washington while that's happening, which is so exciting. We have talked a lot about Dobbs v. Jackson on the podcast. And however, Grace and I are not experts. And I would love for you to tell us whether Dobbs v. Jackson, what's that going to do to our abortion law? Could it overturn Roe v. Wade?
Well, I think that's the $1 million question.
Sure, yeah.
And well, first, just to make sure everybody watching understands and knows about DoBBs. I'm sure many people do, but just in case, I want to just give a little primer on that.
Please.
So this is probably one of the most significant abortion cases that the United States Supreme Court will hear, maybe in my lifetime, depending on how long I live. So they will be looking at, they will, because of the questions they have to answer, be taking a serious look at Roe and Casey, and there is potential that those would be overturned. But this case is about a 15-week abortion ban. It was a law passed by Mississippi, in which they said abortions after 15 weeks are not legal. And people challenge that, saying that it's unconstitutional and it infringes on the right to abortion.
Because the Roe standard is that states can't regulate abortion before 24 weeks / viability.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So this obviously, before that.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the court has taken this on, they are going to have to tackle, what does Roe mean? What does Casey mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, honestly, I've wrestled with what's going to happen. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I think, in the beginning, knowing that they were taking this case, I wasn't, and with some of the decisions that have previously been made by this court, some of the, incremental approach, I appreciate, but I think, in the depths of my heart, I just want them to abolish abortion.
Abolish it.
But what are the implications of that? As I said, each case, bleeds into another. So what does that mean for everything else? And I'm not sure, honestly, I think, the court could go in a lot of directions, and we've got probably like 10 minutes for the rest of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So in short, I've been following some legal scholars, Professor Robert George and Sharif Gurgis, and I am actually surprised that they are persuading me that perhaps there is something momentous coming down the pipe.
Wow.
Because I don't think what they've said, and what I actually think is pretty persuasive, is that I'm not sure that the court has room for a middle ground.
Okay.
That they would have to, by the nature of the decisions of Roe and Casey, actually have to get rid of them because, as Sharif Gurgis has said, the various things the court has to work with in maybe setting up narrower standards would be something with respect to viability, as you just talked about, fetal pain, and even the undue burden standard that Casey set out, which is basically, if something poses an undue burden on a woman's right to get an abortion, then the law is unconstitutional. But he says, unless the court plans to reaffirm Casey and maybe somehow narrow that down, or create something new and still affirm abortion, then, there's really nothing but to overturn Roe and Casey. And, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think with the current composition of the court, I'm not sure if there are 5 justices that want to reaffirm abortion, that don't understand how destructive this precedent has been. People have talked about stare decisis, meaning, generally you just can't overturn precedent. But there's been a lot of briefs submitted and a lot of discussion about why Roe is really unworkable, and lots of other reasons that are part of that analysis, in which the court may be persuaded that, the decisions that they made in Roe and Casey just essentially don't work anymore.
Wow.
There's a lot of other things that they talk about, and that's not the only standard.
And that's kind of best possible scenario.
It really is best possible scenario. And then there's obviously all of the in-betweens. And I think after we hear oral argument, we'll kind of read the tea leaves and see, based on the questions they ask and make all these speculations. But we've had 50 years or so of this precedent, and we've seen continuous destruction. We've also seen continuous confusion. We also submitted a brief and co-counseled in that for the June medical case, and that's what we wrote about. We basically said lawmakers, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, are really confused because we don't know what laws are going to be deemed constitutional or unconstitutional because abortion jurisprudence is really schizophrenic. There's actually a law review article that literally talks about that.
So, as you've mentioned, this is so exciting. Not only have you done armchair analysis on this case, and we're benefiting from the fruit of your knowledge right now, but you have actively participated in this in the form of an amicus brief. So can you tell us what an amicus brief is and what arguments did we make to the Supreme Court?
Right. Well, an amicus brief is a friend of the court brief, and so you are picking a position on a certain side. This side, for us, we represent 6 family policy groups, including Advancing American Freedom, Minnesota Family Council, Iowa Family Policy Council, South Dakota, Nebraska, and then Center for Political Renewal. So we all teamed up, and we are all very passionate about families and how abortion affects families and the real implications of abortion.
Yeah.
So as you mentioned, I co-counseled with Professor Teresa Collette, director of the University of St. Thomas Pro-Life Law Center, and we wanted to help the court understand the implications of abortion at a deeper level, and also bring in some empirical evidence. We're not just saying things, we're actually supporting what we've said with some hard data. And so as a friend of the court, we're helping to supply the justices with information that they wouldn't get in the briefs that are submitted on the merits. So we are talking about issues that are not talked about by other people. And each person that submits a friend of the court brief takes a specific angle, and basically it's like supplemental information. And we are really hoping that the court picks up our brief and gives it a good read and finds it to be helpful, because it is. And I do have to say that we are also privileged to consult with Professor Lynn Marie Combe, who is a law professor here. She has also done some tremendous work in this area on the implications of abortion in families. So this was a collective effort in gathering this information together, not only explaining the law since Roe, but also what are those impacts. We outlined 5 specific areas, and I have to tell you, I haven't committed them all to memory. So I may have to do a little bit of reading here. But we talked about 5 ways in which abortion has been destructive to society and has been destructive to families. The first thing is that we know how abortion is destructive to women. And there's a relationship between abortion and declining family formation. We know that abortion actually promotes some instability in the family. Just having abortion access has really changed societal expectations about sexual relationships. And so we have in the brief talked about how those expectations have contributed to the destabilization of family. I mean, when you just have sex readily available because you can go get an abortion, people's mentality changes. We know from some of the work I'm just reading here from Mark Regeneris, that having more sexual partners makes stable marriages and families more difficult to achieve. And for many young adults, with sex available outside of marriage, many young adults see marriage as just like an encumbrance.
Right.
So it's when you disconnect marriage and sex from childbearing, there's an entirely different mentality that, just kind of undergirds society. And that's what we're seeing with respect with abortion.
Right.
You'll find this interesting, Moses, the political buff that you are. Even Janet Yellen, who is our current Secretary of the U.S. Treasury, has written about this and noted this in her article in 1996. She said, by making the birth of the child the physical choice of the mother, the sexual revolution has made marriage and child support a social choice of the father. That's not a very healthy environment or ethic if you want to foster family flourishing.
I never thought I'd say this phrase, but based Janet Yellen.
I have to admit, that's probably one of our favorite quotes.
That's awesome.
But I think that just demonstrates that regardless of what side of the political aisle you're on, you can see that abortion impacts sexuality. Abortion impacts people's perception of, what that means to a relationship. And again, it's these kind of undergirdings that are eroding the family and eroding that stability. And children deserve that stability.
Yes.
And with abortion, if it continues, we're going to continue to see destabilization of the family.
Right.
We also noted that broad access to abortion is a contributor to devaluing women in the marketplace. You often hear the argument that we need abortion as women in order to survive, but in fact, by having abortion, we've created a culture of disdain for pregnancy because, after all, pregnancy is women's personal choice.
Right.
As we noted in our brief, as well as, another brief that was just basically on the topic of the impact of abortion on women and how it's not as liberating as some people claim it is.
Right.
We see, Pregnancy Discrimination Act passed that was, supposed to help women, and yet we see women in all walks of life still being discriminated against for being pregnant. We've seen this with Olympic athletes, stockbrokers, law firm partners, bakers at Walmart. So, this idea that abortion liberates is wrong. Again, like I said, it creates a disdain for pregnancy and a social ethic that doesn't appreciate, the natural biological consequences of being a woman.
Right, and how we all got here.
Exactly. It's almost like it's a punishment. And so instead of, accommodating women or finding women that are having to, kind of pass all these hoops or, backdoor, I hope you're not pregnant kind of things.
Right.
So I don't see how that's liberating.
No.
So again, it's this pervasive ethic that abortion infuses into society that we all need to be aware of. And I think because we're so used to living in it, we don't often think, wait, abortion is a contributor to how employers respond to a woman that's pregnant. Abortion is responsible for how, young people that meet at a bar might think about casual sex.
Right.
So again, it's these undergirds of like, what has abortion done to society? And when we go back to the court and think about precedent, we hope that the court considers the much broader implications of abortion. And I'm not done. So,
and there are more.
Well, there is much more. So another consequence that we discuss in the brief is reproductive coercion, is when a woman is forced to get an abortion or even injured by her partner, which the partner knows may cause a miscarriage. We see that this in a lot with victims of human trafficking, where they're denied prenatal care and forced to have an abortion. And as I said, I'm sorry I don't have this committed to memory, but as we note in our brief, the statistic that women experiencing reproductive, out of women who experience reproductive coercion, 75% ended in abortion, and majority of those cases were due to the demands of the reproductive partners. So this isn't, again, a woman's choice. This is a partner forcing her because they don't like the consequence of pregnancy.
Right.
And again, research tells us that trafficking victims are much more vulnerable because they're susceptible to the lack of emotional connection that their handlers have. So, if you don't have a connection to this child, what's it to you that you get aborted? And then you force this abortion on this person who you're already treating inhumanely. And I think, one of our favorite quotes is from Professor Combe, and I told you about her law review article and her great work. But she summed it up brilliantly when she stated in her law review article, abortion is sometimes described as a man's solution to a woman's problem.
That's amazing. That's just a mic drop quote. And, Grace isn't here today, but she's always talking about how abortion is anti-woman. And I think it's so true. People get pro-lifers wrong in this issue every time, every day of the week. They think that we're somehow the anti-woman group, when in fact we are the people advocating for women, for the protection not just of women's health, women's safety, and women's right to determine their own existence, free from the coercion of, as you say, their reproductive partners. And that's what abortion makes possible. Not freedom, but actually bondage.
Exactly. And that was the point I was going to make, is that Casey and other abortion jurisprudence encourages this, as if society has no duty or responsibility to women or their unborn children.
Oh my gosh, that's just so excellent. Like we have made ourselves into a society where abortion is a shortcut instead of doing the real and difficult work of making a society that is safe and positive for women and children. We've created a shortcut to it. Actually makes it unsafe for children, but also unsafe for women.
Right, and a lot harder. When I was at the Supreme Court for June Medical, there was a lot of people giving testimonies about the medical consequences of abortion, perforated uterus and other things, and that's very dangerous. Right. So again, these consequences that have come with abortion that we're hoping the court will look at. It's, like I said, it's legally unworkable. From a policy perspective, it's unworkable. And just from societal good, we are exposing that in this brief, that abortion is not a societal good. And we also know that abortion impacts the role of parents. And the jurisprudence on this is quite astounding. In no other area of law do we see the latitude given to youth and minors as is given in the case of abortion through judicial bypass. And so what I'm talking about is the lack of parental consent needed to get an abortion. Many states have parental notification and parental consent laws. Notification is simply making sure that the doctor does his due diligence in telling the parents or guardian of this child that a child wants to get an abortion, or a minor wants to get an abortion. And then consent would obviously be, you need the parental consent. But there's something called judicial bypass, where a judge determines by certain standards, including best interest, whether a minor should be able to obtain an abortion without her parents' consent. So this deprives the parents of due process, and it also deprives our daughters of their parents when she needs them most. I mean, when you're going in for surgery, you can't have a judicial bypass, to go get your appendix taken out. I mean, I had mine taken out in 3rd grade. I don't think I did not have the capacity to make decisions about my physical and mental health on my own. And so because the law has created this opportunity for young women, again, they're very vulnerable. They're susceptible, as we talked about, to reproductive coercion. But they're also just susceptible to lifelong consequences that a young woman cannot comprehend.
That happens frequently in Minnesota, right? That's the state of play here. That we do, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have a parental consent law.
Parental notification.
We have a parental notification, but even that is judicially bypassed in Minnesota.
You can, yes.
Okay, wow. That is horrifying. And I think, oh my goodness, I just think it's just so clear. Like it's just so clear to me from what you're saying here that that abortion has maybe this is too fancy a word, but negative externalities for our entire society. Even those of us who never have participated in abortion, who oppose abortion, are negatively affected because abortion exists.
Right.
We as a society need to think about that. It isn't about one person's individual choice, because as Renee has said, it's often about a choice that's coerced, where a young woman is pressured by a boyfriend, let's say, but is able to judicially bypass any influence from her parents. They are completely kept in the dark, but the boyfriend was more involved in the commission of the act. So and is in theory, and we obviously, it's so common for men to tell women and girls, you can't do this. If you have this baby, it will ruin my life. That type of thing. And
abortion gives that narrative permission. It's what enables that, and it's what enables that kind of disjointedness between men and women and what they're created to do together, the sanctity of life and the sanctity of marriage, and just the purpose of that relationship. One of those purposes is procreation.
Yeah. And
so it just kind of thwarts all of that when you have an ethos of death.
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
Of course society is going to be impacted when you start rallying around something that is just vile to who we are. And there is a sense of universal morality in which all cultures in all countries understand that, death and murder is wrong.
And babies are good.
And yes, and babies are good. And so, we don't have to be Christians to support that.
No,
Again,
right.
There's a sense of universal morality in which that is well understood. And abortion is in direct contradiction to that. And the irony is that, some of the statistics we show is that, even with a topic as sensitive as abortion, for almost 40 years, over 70% of Americans support parental consent and notification laws. So, it's not even that this is embraced by, popular culture. And, even young people support this. We have a poll I'm looking at here. In 2005, of 1,000 high school seniors revealed that 2/3 believe that women under 18 should be required by law to get permission of a parent before she can have abortion.
There it is. That's pretty black and white.
So, the youth themselves recognize, I don't think I want to go this alone.
Yes.
And there's nothing shameful or wrong about that.
Right.
And as I shared, there's some other startling statistics here that I think that people might want to sit with here. As I shared, abortion has long-term effects. And in a survey that we looked at, some of those long-term effects include 44% of women voiced regret about their decision to abort. 44% were depressed. 31% expressed feelings of loss. 27% have feelings of shame. And 13% have phobic responses to infants.
Oh my gosh.
I was imagining that in my head, and that just does not look good.
Yeah.
And then 42% of these women, the adverse psychological effects of abortion endured over 10 years. So it's a consequential decision, and I hope that everybody listening is now kind of, stewing in this and understanding that we're not out there saying, hey, end abortion and, take away this right. What we're saying is look at the deep impacts of abortion. Look how it has affected society. Look at the undergirdings. Look at the things we've talked about, reproductive coercion, the impacts on women in the workforce, the impacts on sexual relationships and responsibility, and even reverence for the idea that men and women can create together.
Yeah.
And then now the impact it has on parental relationships and minors. It's overall destructive. And, our fifth and final point in the brief is that Roe and Casey were a catalyst to increase sexual activity among minors. And, that comes with its own consequences. I'm looking here, almost 2/3 of adolescent mothers have partners older than 20 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is just gross. And we've heard stories and congressional testimony about this for years, where young girls were coerced into getting an abortion and hiding a relationship with an adult man.
Oh my goodness.
I can imagine how just shameful you would feel and how violated you would feel. We also note that the frequency of adult males impregnating teens is about 71%, or over 33,000. So a survey of 1,500 unmarried minors having abortions revealed that among minors who reported that neither parent knew of the abortion, 89% said that a boyfriend was involved in deciding or arranging the abortion, with 93% when the child was younger than 15. And it was further reported that 76% of women, of those abortions were paid for by the boyfriend.
Wow.
So again, access to abortion opens up this door to, increased teen sex. And I know that Planned Parenthood
and not just teen sex, but it creates a market by which adult men are able to find romantic prospects among high school students,
exactly,
and then are able to pay a couple $100 to make the problem go away.
Exactly. And this does nothing, as we just came out of a couple of years of intense Me Too movement and whatnot.
Right.
How does this help to support women who are victims of rape? It does nothing.
It doesn't.
It makes them victim all the more.
Right. Oh my goodness. That honestly is so depressing.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm the bearer of interesting news. Not always good, but staggering news and things that we just need to come to terms with. So I hope that people listening today will really think about these consequences and feel empowered. When you want to talk to somebody about abortion, you're not talking about taking away something good. You can talk to them about the significant consequences and how this has invaded society and all the impacts that it's had, on women and parents and teens, and even men.
Yeah.
This isn't just an isolated issue that we put in a corner at something, as you said, impacts everybody.
Right.
And so, our intent with this brief, again, was to be able to provide that information, not only for the court, but we hope that it's useful to legislators across the country, and as well as others who are champions for the life movement that want to be more informed and see the empirical data that shows you're right. Life is the way to go.
Man, that's a hopeful note to end on. And I think I read the brief. I made a few tiny little edits. And
yes, your grammar is very
and that just makes me feel
helpful.
Good that maybe one piece of my grammar made it into a Supreme Court brief. But I think the really amazing thing is that I just have this feeling that if it's not Dobbs, it's the next case or the next case, that we are at a tipping point. Or
that it's people that want to step up and say, I'm going to run for office. I'm pro-life, and this is my initiative.
Yes.
And that the people of Minnesota, this really comes from the boots on the ground level. What do the people think about things? And that's even, why the Supreme Court takes up certain cases.
Right.
That's why they had to hear the marriage case, because they thought that the people were ready. And so I think we underestimate our, power of the people. A lot of people think that they're not heard or that their voice doesn't matter. But the narrative that is populated the most seems to be the narrative that wins. So we need to be the ones that populate the narrative. We need to be the ones speaking into this, speaking accurately and speaking truthfully, and we will have an impact, a positive impact.
Oh, man. And it isn't just Bible thumping. It isn't putting our religion on people who don't agree with it. I didn't quote any of the
Bible today.
What'd you say?
I don't think I quoted any of the Bible today.
No, you did not. Like the argument that you're making, I think, is just it's something that, as you say, people in countries that have no concept of Christianity, they agree with this. They understand this instinctually. And you talked about kind of a natural law argument for just what human society is and how abortion cuts at the root of what that is.
Right.
So as we come in for a landing, I think this is one of the most significant episodes of the podcast that we've had so far, because the Dobbs case is crucial. Renee's work helping Minnesotans is crucial. And I want to say on that note, if you want to get more information about what we do, go to truenorthlegal.org and get more information. And also, if you or someone you know requires confidential legal assistance on issues relating to life, family, religious freedom, that's what we're here to do. And there's a form on the website where you can confidentially submit a request that we would, that Renee would review. And I urge you to do that. And this is the time that there's going to be more, not fewer, of these needs, especially as we've discussed with the vaccine mandates. And so I just Renee is worth twice her weight in gold. Not for our organization.
I'll come on the podcast for the compliments. Thanks.
Not even for our organization, but just for all the people that you've already been able to help in this role, and for the people who we know you're going to be able to help in the future. And so I'm so grateful, Renee, that you've been able to join us today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, Moses. And thank you for your work.
Well, I'm just here behind the microphone every week.
We are a team here at Minnesota Family Counsel, True North Legal.
That's true. And so I hope this has been helpful to everyone watching and listening. Remember to leave a review. We'd love to see those reviews. Remember to hit that bell icon so that you get a notification whenever we post on YouTube. This has been the Family Beacon podcast, where you can get the facts so that you can stand for truth. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for listening to or watching this episode of the Family Beacon podcast from Minnesota Family Counsel. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you're up to date on life, family, and religious freedom. You can follow us on Instagram at MN Family Counsel and subscribe to us on YouTube to watch our content. Get the facts, stand for truth.